Hey, my name is Elizabeth,
And my name's Emily.
and today we're going to be talking about the constructivist classroom and the role of the teacher and the student. So a constructivist classroom focuses on bigger ideas and allows the students to be responsible for their own learning.
Yes, and so first we're going to talk about the role of the teacher in a constructivist classroom. So our first point is the educator should consider the knowledge and experiences students bring to the class.
And our exceptionality that the student has is that the student has autism, and some of the modifications that we could do in our classroom would be to provide the student with a generic question prompt to use while reading or during whole class instruction, whole group instruction, so they can follow along and just see kind of as they're going through the lesson what all to focus on, and then also to allow the student to reread material or to practice skills and strategies on previously read text rather than on new text. The teacher is knowledge is actively constructed and learning is presented as a process of active discovery.
So students that have ADHD may need to do activities where they move around a lot, and so it's really important for the teacher to try to incorporate a lot of movement into their lessons to help these students burn off some of the excess energy that they have in an appropriate way. So a modification that they could use would be to provide the class with different learning stations where the students get to do hands-on activities. The role of the teacher that we're going to talk about is present authentic tasks to contextualize learning through real-world, case-based learning environments.
And our student in this situation has a language barrier, and so some of the modifications that we could do would be to model the steps of a process and to show the students like exactly what they need to do and what the finished product should look like. So just helping them throughout the process, and then also to incorporate more group work where students can practice their language with the peers on a more personal, lower risk setting, and just helping them, maybe bringing in a guest speaker so that they can talk to them and just making them feel comfortable and allowing them to work with others despite their language barrier.
Students also have roles in the classroom, and the first one that we're going to talk about is the role of the student to actively participate in their own education.
So some of the things that the students would have to change is that they would have to come into the classroom with a positive attitude and want to learn, and that will change the whole atmosphere of the class. So them being responsible for what they're learning is a huge key in this, but also you could have them complete a checklist every day to keep them on track on what they're learning and just see their growth throughout the year. And then you could also have them demonstrate this by making sure that they're engaged by their the way that they're sitting, their posture, and just the way that they come in the classroom with their body language. And then lastly, you could also have them write questions, like if you have a paragraph for them to read, or a couple paragraphs, just have them write down questions as they're reading so that they're actively engaged in what they're learning and that they can come back and say, hey, I learned this from this, instead of just reading it and forgetting everything they read. The second role of the student is for students to have to accommodate and assimilate new information with their current understanding.
So one of the changes that students can demonstrate is to complete a graphic organizer showing that they have learned new information, so they can complete something like a Venn diagram or a KWL chart. And a KWL chart is really, really good to use in classrooms because it helps students see what they know, what they want to know, and what they learn after they're done in the class. And so students can participate in the learning process, and they may even learn from each other and see what their peers know.
Another change for the student is they can be given an exit slip or a quick write, and that can allow them to focus on what they learned that day and how to connect that to prior knowledge. The teacher can ask different questions about the subject that they taught that day and just really connecting on what they knew before they came into class and then connecting that to what they learned in class.
Another role of the student that we're going to talk about is because knowledge is so communally based, learners deserve access to knowledge of different communities.
And I think one of the changes that a student can really work on towards reaching this goal is just for them to realize that their classmates are going to be different than them and that there's a lot of diversity in the classroom. That's also important for the teacher to realize, but for the students to focus on that they can learn something from anyone, no matter where they're from or their culture or anything about them. They can still learn something about them. And also, I think it's important for the students to realize that they have resources in the classroom and even outside of the classroom. So people they may know from the community, just realizing that there's something that they can learn from them and focusing on that. So some of the teacher roles and responsibilities, like we talked about, need to be adjusted and modified for students with special needs. And I think one of the best ways that a teacher can know what they need to modify or adjust is just to get to know the students, to know what they like, to know what they dislike, to know what their disability is and maybe how you could accommodate them or just help them throughout the classroom where that's needed. And I think another thing that a teacher can focus on is multiple intelligences and learning how that goes with knowing the students, but learning how the student learns and learns in the best environment and giving them that. And I think that just a teacher can change the way that they teach and allow that to help the student learn.
A good way for a teacher to incorporate the multiple intelligences in their lessons is through planning. Teachers need to make sure that they plan their lessons according to their students, because unless they know their students, they won't know how to plan their lessons or how their students are going to learn best. And this is extremely important for making sure that the learning is equitable for all the students. And even though some students may not have special needs, they may enjoy the activities and learn even more than they thought they could in your class.
Some of the student roles and responsibilities that students must be responsible for in order to have successful learning in the classroom is for them to realize that not everyone in the classroom is the same and is not going to learn the same. And I think really just looking at that and realizing that they can learn something no matter who the person is or, like I said earlier, where they come from, and allowing that to shape their experiences in the classroom.
Yes, and an important way for teachers to help students facilitate this is through making engaging lessons, because since they know their students, they're going to know what interests them, and the students will show that they're engaged through their body language and through their how they talk and how much they are incorporated into the lesson, which will help incorporate students, which will give them an intrinsic motivation and a desire to learn.
And the stuff that we discussed with the teacher role and student role correlate directly with the InTask principles, especially number 6, which is communication. It's so important not only for the students to communicate with each other, but also for the teacher to communicate with the students, and even administration and parents is so important in the classroom. And we see that the student can learn more if they feel like they're in a safe environment, if they feel like that they can talk to the teacher and trust the teacher and what they're learning, and just with everything in the classroom. So it's just really important that there's a two-way, not just a one-way communication between the teacher and the student.
Another InTask principle that goes right along with this is number 2, which is understanding development. So teachers need to know their students and have a relationship with their students so that they know where they're at in their classroom and their learning and how they learn. And they need to provide a ton of different learning opportunities for their students. For example, if you're teaching an elementary math class and you're talking about adding, maybe the students don't need to use manipulatives or anything because they already understand the concept of adding, but maybe you have a student that needs that manipulative. That way they can physically interact with the addition to understand the concept fully.
How you can use InTask principles to shape the teachers' roles and students' roles in the classroom.